My name is Savannah, I am 30 years old and I live in Chicago. The sunlight in the apartment was blinding. It bounced off the polished marble floors and the floor-to-ceiling windows. My husband, David, stood next to me. He had his hand on the small of my back. It was a touch that used to mean love. Now I knew it was just ownership. We were looking at a penthouse. It was expensive, too expensive. But David insisted. The owner was a tall man with a thick accent. He looked at David, then glanced at me with a dismissive smile. He thought I was just the wallet. He thought I was just the quiet American wife. Then he turned to David and spoke in clear, rapid German. "Sie hat keine Ahnung, dass das Geld und dies Wohnung dir gehören würden, sobald ihre Scheidung durch ist. She has no idea the money, and this apartment will be yours once her divorce is final." David laughed. It was a low, conspiratorial chuckle. He nodded at the man. My heart didn't break. It simply stopped beating for a second, and then started again, colder than before. They thought I was clueless. They thought I was deaf to their secret language. But they didn't know my mother was from Berlin. They didn't know I was fluent. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just stared at the view, and in that moment my marriage didn't just end. My revenge began. But before I tell you how everything flipped, like and subscribe, drop a comment. Where are you watching from? My name is Savannah. I am 30 years old, and I live in Chicago. I remember exactly how David looked the day we met. It was at a charity gala in Chicago. He was wearing a tuxedo that fit him perfectly. He had a smile that made you feel like you were the only person in the room. He was confident. He was polished. He walked with a swagger that said he owned the world. But looking back now, I see what I missed then. I see the cracks I chose to ignore. I was 26. I had just inherited my grandmother's estate. It was a lot of money. It was the kind of money that changes how people look at you. I was lonely. My family was distant. My parents were busy with their own lives, always traveling, always working. I grew up with nannies and boarding schools. I wanted a home. I wanted someone to choose me, not for my last name but for me. David chose me, or so I thought. We fell in love fast. It was a whirlwind. He sent me flowers every day. He wrote me notes. He listened to me when I talked about my art, my fears, my dreams. No one had ever listened to me like that. He seemed so strong. He seemed like the protector I always wanted. We got married 6 months after we met. My brother James warned me. He said, "Savannah, you don't know him. He has debt. His business is failing." I didn't listen. I told James he was being cynical. I told him David loved me. I was wrong. The first year of marriage was happy. I paid off David's debts. I invested in his tech startup. I bought us a beautiful house in the suburbs. I wanted to build a life. I wanted stability. I put everything I had into making him feel secure. But David was insecure deep down. He needed constant praise. He needed to feel like the big man, even though it was my money paying for his suits and his car. I learned to make myself smaller so he could feel bigger. I stopped talking about my investments. I let him sign the checks at dinner. I played the role of the supportive wife. Then, the changes started. They were small at first. It was the second year of our marriage. David started working late. He said his business was finally taking off. He said he had a new international partnership. "I have to take calls from Europe," he told me one night, pacing in the living room. "It's a big deal, Savannah. This is going to make us millions." "We have millions, David," I said gently. He snapped at me. "That's your money. I want my money." That was the first time I felt a chill. He resented me. He resented that I saved him. He started locking his phone. He changed his passcode. When I walked into the room, he would flip his screen down. If I asked who he was talking to, he would say, "Just work. You wouldn't understand the technical details." Then came the German. I found a book on his nightstand one evening. "Learn German in 30 days. "I didn't know you were learning a language," I said, picking it up. He snatched it from my hand. "It's for business. The new partners are in Zurich. I need to impress them." "I can help you," I said. "My mother was German. I speak it." He laughed. It was a dismissive sound. "Savannah, you speak kitchen German. You know how to order sausages and say hello to your grandmother. This is business German. It's complicated. Don't worry about it." He didn't know. I never spoke German around him because he didn't like it. He said it sounded harsh. So I kept that part of myself hidden, just like I hid my financial statements. But I wasn't just fluent in kitchen German. I read German literature. I watched German news. It was my secret comfort. But I stayed silent. I let him think he was the smart one. Then the woman appeared. Her name was Alina. She was part of his business partner team. He brought her up in conversation casually at first. Alina had a great idea for the marketing strategy, he would say over dinner. Alina thinks we should expand to real estate. Alina is very European. She has a different perspective. I met her once. She came to our house for a quick meeting before a business trip. She was tall, blonde, and very sharp. She looked at me with eyes that were cold and calculating. She didn't look at me like a wife. She looked at me like an obstacle. "Nice house," she said, looking around our living room. "Very traditional." "Thank you," I said. "I designed the interior myself." "Cute," she said. She turned her back to me and started talking to David about margins and projections. David lit up when she spoke. He stood taller. He laughed louder. I stood in the kitchen making coffee for them, feeling like a servant in my own home. I watched them through the doorway. They stood too close. He touched her arm when he made a point. She leaned in when she laughed. My stomach twisted. I knew that feeling. It was the feeling of being an outsider. That night after she left, I asked him, "Is there something going on with Alina?" David exploded. "Are you crazy? She is a business associate. Why are you so jealous? You're always trying to bring me down. I'm finally succeeding and you can't handle it." He made me feel small. He made me feel guilty. I apologized. I told him I was just tired, but the seed was planted. I wasn't crazy. I knew what I saw. The late nights got later. He started taking trips on weekends. Networking events, he called them. He came home smelling of different soap. He bought new clothes, styles he never liked before, sharper, more European. I was lonely. I sat in that big house, surrounded by things I bought, waiting for a husband who didn't want to be there. I tried to talk to my brother, James, but I couldn't bring myself to admit he was right. I was too proud. I wanted to fix it. I wanted to believe in the lie, so I waited. I watched. I stopped asking questions. And that was when I started to see the truth. The unraveling didn't happen with a bang. It happened on a Tuesday evening over a plate of pasta. David was in a good mood. He was humming to himself. He had just come back from a conference in Miami. He was pouring wine into 2 glasses. "Here you go, Alina," he said. The room went silent. The air felt heavy. He froze. He held the glass of wine in midair. I looked at him. I didn't blink. "What did you call me?" He laughed. It was a nervous, high-pitched laugh. I said, "Savannah, you're hearing things, honey. I was just on the phone with Alina all day about the merger. Her name is stuck in my head." "You called me Alina," I said calmly. "I did not." He slammed the glass down. Wine splashed onto the white tablecloth. "Stop being so dramatic. You're always looking for a fight." He stormed out of the room. He went upstairs and slammed the bedroom door. I sat there at the dining table. I looked at the red stains spreading on the white cloth. It looked like blood. I didn't follow him. I didn't go upstairs to beg for forgiveness like I usually did. Something inside me had shifted. The doubt was gone. The confusion was gone. I knew. I waited until 2 a.m. I lay in bed next to him, listening to his breathing. When his breathing became deep and rhythmic, I slipped out of bed. I went downstairs to his home office. He was careful, but he was arrogant. He thought I was stupid. He thought I was just the creative wife who didn't understand technology. I opened his laptop. I knew his password. He had changed it, but I had watched him type it in last week over his shoulder. It was Success 2024. I typed it in. The screen glowed blue in the dark room. My hands were shaking, but my mind was clear. I didn't look at his emails first. I went straight to his files. I searched for Alina. Nothing came up. I searched for business plan. Nothing. Then I saw a folder on the desktop labeled Project Freedom. I clicked it. My heart hammered against my ribs. There were subfolders, assets, legal, timeline. I opened assets first. There was a spreadsheet. It listed everything. My trust fund. The house, the investment accounts. The vacation home in Aspen. Next to each item was a value and a note on how to liquidate it or transfer it. He had listed my grandmother's jewelry collection. He had estimated the value of my art studio. I felt sick. He wasn't just cheating. He was calculating. He was counting my money as his own. I opened the legal folder. There was a draft of a divorce petition. It was dated for 3 months from now. I read the document. It was brutal. He was asking for spousal support. He was claiming that he had contributed to the growth of my assets. He was asking for the house. But the worst part was the email draft attached to it. It was addressed to Alina. Subject, almost there. Body, just hang tight, baby. The quarterly trust payout hits her account on the 15th of next month. Once that clears, I'll move the funds to the offshore shell we set up. Then I file the papers. She won't know what hit her. We'll have the apartment in Berlin by Christmas. I can't wait to be done with her. She's so boring it hurts. I stared at the words. She's so boring it hurts. I read it again. And again. I didn't cry. I expected to cry. I expected to fall apart. But I didn't. Instead, I felt a strange sensation. It was like a heavy coat had been taken off my shoulders. For years, I had worried that I wasn't enough. I had worried that I was too needy, too quiet, too plain. I had tried so hard to be the perfect wife. But it wasn't about me. It was never about me. He was a predator, I was prey. He didn't love me, he didn't even like me. He was just tolerating me until he could steal enough money to leave. I closed the laptop. I wiped the trackpad with the hem of my shirt to remove my fingerprints. I sat in the dark office for a long time. I looked at the family photos on his desk. There was a picture of us on our honeymoon in Italy. He was smiling. I was looking at him with adoration. I took the photo frame and placed it face down. The Savannah who loved him died in that chair. The Savannah who trusted blindly was gone. I stood up. I felt different. I felt cold but strong. I went back upstairs. I climbed into bed next to the man who was planning to destroy me. He rolled over in his sleep and draped his arm over me. I didn't flinch. I lay there, wide awake, staring at the ceiling. He had a plan. He had a timeline. He thought he had 3 months. He was wrong. I had the information now. And information is power. I closed my eyes, but I didn't sleep. I started planning. The next morning, I woke up before him. I made coffee. I made pancakes. I put fresh flowers on the table. When David came down, I greeted him with a smile. "Good morning, honey," I said. I kissed his cheek. "I'm sorry about last night. I was tired. I shouldn't have snapped at you." He looked relieved. He kissed me back. "It's okay, babe. I know you've been stressed. Let's just forget it." "Forgotten," I said. He ate the pancakes. He talked about his day. I nodded. I listened. I laughed at his jokes. Inside, I was screaming. But on the outside, I was the perfect picture of a submissive, loving wife. I had become an actress. It was the most important role of my life. As soon as his car pulled out of the driveway, I went to work. I didn't call the family lawyer. David knew him. I needed someone new, someone aggressive. I drove into the city. I met with a woman named Margaret. She was known as the shark in legal circles. She had a small office, but her suits were sharp and her eyes were sharper. I sat in her office and laid it all out. I told her about the laptop. I told her about the timeline. I told her about Alina. "I don't just want a divorce," I told her. "I want to destroy him. I want him to leave with nothing, not a penny." Margaret smiled. "I can do that, but you have to be patient. You have to play the game." "I can play," I said. For the next 4 weeks, I lived a double life. By day, I was moving money. I instructed my bankers to freeze the joint accounts, but to make it look like a system error if he checked. I transferred the bulk of my inheritance into a trust that was untouchable. I put the deed to the summer house in my brother's name. I hired a private investigator. He followed David. He got photos of David and Alina at hotels. He got copies of their restaurant receipts. He tracked the business trips. Every night David came home and I played the doting wife. "How was work?" I asked. "Exhausting," he would say, looking at his phone. "But we're making progress." "I'm so proud of you," I would say. He bought it. He was so arrogant, so sure of his own intelligence, that he never suspected I was making moves. He thought I was the same naive girl he married. It was hard. There were moments when I wanted to scream. There were moments when he would touch me and my skin would crawl. One night we were watching a movie. He put his head on my lap. "You know," he said, "I think we should take a trip soon, just the two of us, maybe back to Italy." I stroked his hair. "That sounds lovely, David." I knew exactly why he said that. I had seen the file. He planned to take me to Italy, distract me, and have me sign some tax documents which were actually power of attorney forms. "Maybe in the fall," I said. "Sure," he said. "In the fall." He fell asleep on my lap. I looked down at his face. He looked peaceful. It was terrifying how easily he could lie. I started to weaponize my silence. I stopped offering opinions. I let him think everything was his idea. "Should we sell the stocks in the tech sector?" he asked one day. "I don't know, David," I said. "You're the genius with money. What do you think?" he preened. "I think we sell. I'll handle it." "Okay," I said. He handled it, thinking he was moving the money to his secret account. But I had already alerted the bank. The money moved, but it went into a holding account he couldn't access. He saw the confirmation screen, but he didn't check the balance. He was too sloppy. My brother, James, came to visit one weekend. He saw how thin I was. He saw the tension in my jaw. "Savannah, are you okay?" he asked when David was out of the room. "I'm fine," I whispered. "Just trust me, James, I'm handling it." "He looks smug," James said. "Let him be smug," I said. "Smug men make mistakes." And David did make mistakes. He got comfortable. He started leaving his phone unlocked. He started taking calls from Alina in the next room, speaking in low tones but loud enough for me to hear the tone of his voice. He was getting ready for the kill, but he didn't know I was the one holding the knife. I practiced my German in the car when I was alone. I listened to podcasts. I refreshed my vocabulary. I needed to be perfect. I knew the end was coming. I could feel it. The trust payout he was waiting for was scheduled for Friday. On Wednesday, he came home with a wide grin. "Savannah," he said, "I found it." "Found what?" "Our new investment. It's a penthouse. In the city. It's being sold by a foreign investor. It's an incredible deal. We need to go see it tomorrow." I knew what this was. This was the apartment he wanted for Alina. He wanted me to buy it, thinking it was an investment, and then he would take it in the divorce. "That sounds exciting," I said. "Let's go." "Great," he said. "The owner is German, but don't worry, I'll handle the talking, you just nod and smile." "I can do that," I said. "I'm very good at nodding and smiling." He didn't catch the sarcasm, he just kissed my forehead. Perfect. The morning of the viewing, I dressed carefully. I wore a black dress. It was simple, elegant, and expensive. I wore the pearl earrings my grandmother gave me. I put on my heels. I looked like money. I looked like the perfect trophy wife. David wore his best suit. He was vibrating with energy. "This is it, Savannah," he said as we drove into the city. "This apartment is going to change everything." "I bet it will," I said. He drove fast. He was impatient. He talked about the square footage, the view, the resale value. He didn't ask me how I was feeling. He didn't ask me what I thought. We arrived at the building. It was a glass tower in the most expensive district. We took the private elevator to the top floor. The doors opened directly into the penthouse. It was breathtaking. The city lay spread out beneath us like a map. The floors were white marble. The light was everywhere. The owner was waiting for us. He was a tall man, maybe 50, with silver hair and a stern face. He wore a suit that cost more than my first car. "Mr. Weber," David said, rushing forward to shake his hand. "Good to see you." "Herr David," the man said. His accent was thick. He looked at David, then he looked at me. "And this is my wife, Savannah," David said. He waved a hand at me like I was a piece of furniture. Mr. Weber nodded at me. "Frau Savannah." "Hello," I said softly. I kept my face blank. David immediately launched into business mode. He started walking around the room, pointing at features, talking about down payments and transfer dates. Mr. Weber followed him. They spoke in English, but Mr. Weber struggled slightly. He looked annoyed with David's high energy. I walked behind them. I listened. "The financing is secured," David said loudly. "My wife's trust is available." "Good," Mr. Weber said. They walked to the massive window in the living room. The view was incredible. You could see the river, the park, the skyline. David stood with his hands in his pockets, puffing out his chest. "It's perfect," David said. "Alina will low," he cut himself off. "I mean, we will love it." He glanced at me. I was looking out the window, pretending not to hear. Mr. Weber looked at David with a strange expression. It was a mix of amusement and disgust. Then, Mr. Weber switched to German. He assumed, because of David's earlier comment about my kitchen German, that I couldn't understand complex sentences. "Ist sie damit einverstanden?" Mr. Weber asked. "Is she okay with this?" David laughed. He replied in broken, clumsy German. "Ja, ja, sie macht was ich sage." "Yes, yes. She does what I say." My hands clenched into fists at my sides, but I kept my face smooth. Mr. Weber looked at me again. He looked at my clothes. He looked at my face. He clearly thought I was a fool, a rich, dumb American girl. They continued to discuss the contract. David was getting cocky. He was making jokes in English, then trying to translate them into German, failing miserably. Mr. Weber was getting more candid. He started making comments in German that were not meant for my ears. "Der Preis ist hoch, aber du sollst ja nicht, oder?" Mr. Weber muttered. "The price is high, but you aren't paying, are you?" David smirked. "Nein. Nicht ich? No, not me." I felt a cold rage burning in my chest. It was cleaner than anger. It was pure fuel. They walked over to the kitchen island. There were papers laid out. The contract. We can sign the preliminary agreement today, David said to me. It just holds the property, it's standard. It wasn't standard, it was a binding commitment. Whatever you think is best, David, I said. He handed me a pen. Just sign here, honey. I held the pen. I looked at the paper, I looked at David. His eyes were shining with greed. He was so close to what he wanted. He could taste it. I put the pen down. I think I'll look at the view one more time, I said. David rolled his eyes. Savannah, we don't have all day. Just a moment, I said. I walked back to the window. The sun was bright. I took a deep breath. This was it. The moment I had been waiting for. David and Mr. Weber stood by the island. They were whispering. Mr. Weber leaned in. He spoke in German, loud enough for me to hear across the room, but low enough that he thought it was private. Sie hat keine Ahnung, das das Geld und dies Wohnung dir gehören werden, sobald ihr Scheidung durch ist. She has no idea the money, and this apartment will be yours once her divorce is final. David laughed. That low, conspiratorial chuckle. The trap was snapped. They had walked right into it. I turned around slowly. I faced them. The sunlight was behind me. I saw David's silhouette. I saw the smirk on his face. He thought he had won. He had no idea. I took a step forward. The silence in the room was sudden. It was time to speak. Time seemed to stop in that luxury penthouse. The German sentence hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Sie hat keine Ahnung, das das Geld und dies Wohnung dir gehören werden, sobald ihr Scheidung durch ist. She has no idea the money, and this apartment will be yours once her divorce is final. I stood there by the window. My back was to them. I didn't move a muscle. I didn't turn around immediately. I wanted to let the words sink into my skin. I wanted to remember this moment for the rest of my life. David was laughing. I could hear the smile in his voice. It was a sound I used to love. It was a sound that used to make me feel safe. Now, it sounded like a knife sharpening against a stone. He was so comfortable. He was so sure of himself. He was standing in a room he couldn't afford, looking at a view he didn't own, laughing about destroying the woman who had saved him. I looked out at the city. The cars looked like toys. The people looked like ants. Everything felt distant. I felt a strange separation from my own body. It wasn't shock. It wasn't grief. It was clarity, absolute, crystal-clear clarity. For months, I had been gathering evidence. I had been preparing. I had been the actress. But a small, foolish part of me had still wondered. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe he wasn't that cruel. Maybe he was just confused or stressed or making bad choices. Maybe there was still a tiny piece of the man I married left inside that suit. But that sentence killed the last bit of hope. It killed the last bit of mercy I had for him. He wasn't just leaving me. He was mocking me. He was discussing my destruction with a stranger as if it were a business transaction. He was proud of it. He was boasting about how easily he had fooled me. My heart rate slowed down. My breathing became deep and even. The fear was gone. The sadness was gone. All that was left was a cold, hard resolve. It felt like flipping a switch in a dark room. Suddenly, the lights were on, and I could see everything. I thought about the last few years. I thought about the times I apologized when I did nothing wrong. I thought about the times I asked him for permission to spend my own money. I thought about the nights I lay awake wondering why I wasn't enough for him. I realized then that I was never the problem. I was never the weak one. I was the resource. I was the gold mine he was trying to strip bare. I looked at my reflection in the glass. I saw a woman in a black dress. She looked calm. She looked elegant. She didn't look like a victim. She looked like a judge. David cleared his throat behind me. Savannah, he called out. His voice was impatient. Come on, honey. Stop staring at the clouds. We need to sign this. He thought he was talking to his foolish wife. He thought he was talking to the woman who would sign anything he put in front of her because she was desperate for his approval. He was wrong. He was talking to his executioner. I took a slow breath. I adjusted the strap of my purse on my shoulder. I smoothed the fabric of my dress. I replayed his plan in my head. He wanted me to sign the preliminary contract. He would use my trust fund for the down payment. Then, in 3 weeks, he would file for divorce. He would claim the apartment was a marital asset. He would move Alina in. They would live here, high above the city, spending my money, laughing at how stupid I was. It was a good plan. It was a ruthless plan. But it relied on one thing, my silence. It relied on my ignorance. He didn't know that I had already moved the money. He didn't know that the account linked to my trust fund was empty. He didn't know that I had already signed divorce papers with my lawyer 3 days ago. He didn't know that he was standing on a trapdoor and I was holding the lever. I felt a surge of power. It was intoxicating. For years, he had held the power. He controlled the mood of the house. He controlled the finances. He controlled my self-esteem. Now the power was mine. I turned around slowly. I didn't rush. I moved with a grace that felt new to me. David was smiling at me, holding the pen out. Mr. Weber was checking his watch, looking bored. They looked at me. They expected a smile. They expected compliance. I looked at David's face. I memorized it. I wanted to remember exactly how he looked before his world fell apart. I saw the arrogance in his eyes. I saw the slight tilt of his head. "Is something wrong?" David asked. His smile faltered just a tiny bit. He sensed something. Maybe it was the way I was standing. Maybe it was the lack of warmth in my eyes. "No, David," I said in English. My voice was steady. "Nothing is wrong. Everything is exactly as it should be." He relaxed. "Okay then, come sign." I took a step toward them. My heels clicked on the marble floor. The sound echoed in the large, empty room. Click, click, click. Like a clock counting down. I stopped 3 feet away from them. I looked at Mr. Weber. I looked him directly in the eyes. He seemed surprised. I usually looked at the floor or at David. I never looked the men in the eye. Mr. Weber frowned. He shifted his weight. He didn't like the way I was looking at him. It was too direct. It was too intelligent. I looked back at David. "You really like this apartment, don't you?" I asked. "I love it," David said. "It's our future, Savannah." "Our future," I repeated. With Alina, the name hung in the air, David froze. His mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. His eyes darted to Mr. Weber, then back to me. "What?" he whispered. "Who?" "Alina," I said again. "Your business partner, the woman you were texting this morning, the woman you promised this apartment to." David's face went pale. He tried to laugh, but it came out as a choke. "Savannah, you're being crazy again. I told you, stop," I said. It wasn't a shout, it was a command. He stopped. "I'm not crazy, David," I said. "I'm just not deaf." I turned my gaze to Mr. Weber. He was looking between us, confused. He didn't understand what was happening. He just wanted his commission. He wanted the deal to close. He opened his mouth to speak, probably to tell us to keep our domestic issues at home. But I didn't let him speak. I smiled. It was a cold, sharp smile. And then I opened my mouth and I changed the language. I looked Mr. Weber dead in the eye. I stood tall. I let my voice drop an octave, finding that rich, guttural tone that my mother used to use. "Ease tut mir leid, Herr Weber," I said. My German was flawless. It was crisp, formal, and commanding. "I am sorry, Mr. Weber." The silence that followed was absolute. Mr. Weber's eyes widened. His jaw actually dropped. He looked as if a dog had just started reciting Shakespeare. He stared at me, stunned. David looked confused. He looked at Mr. Weber, then at me. What did you say?" He didn't understand. He still didn't get it. I ignored David. I kept my eyes on the owner. "Mein Mann ist ein Lügner," I continued, speaking clearly so there could be no mistake. Hat kein Geld, hat kein Macht, und wird dies Wohnung sicher nicht kaufen." My husband is a liar. He has no money. He has no power. And he certainly will not be buying this apartment. Mr. Weber took a step back. He looked from me to David. The realization was dawning on him. The woman he had insulted, the woman he had mocked, had understood every single word. David was panicking now. He grabbed my arm. His grip was tight, painful. "Savannah, stop it. What are you speaking? You don't know what you're saying." He turned to Mr. Weber. She's confused. She's just repeating phrases she heard on TV." I ripped my arm away from him. I looked at him with pure disgust. "I'm not confused, David," I said in English. "And I'm not repeating phrases. I'm telling him the truth." I switched back to German, addressing Mr. Weber again. "Sie sagten vorhin, ich hätte keine Ahnung," I said. "Sie sagten, die Wohnung würde ihm gehören, sobald die Scheidung durch ist." You said earlier that I had no idea. You said the apartment would be his once the divorce is final. Mr. Weber went pale. He remembered his words. He realized how deeply he had insulted me. He looked embarrassed, but mostly he looked afraid. He was a businessman. He realized the deal was dead. I continued, my voice steady and relentless. "Das Problem ist, Herr Weber, das mein Mann dieses Apartment mit meinem Geld bezahlen wollte. Mit meinem Erbe." The problem, Mr. Weber, is that my husband wanted to pay for this apartment with my money. With my inheritance. I paused. I let that sink in. "Aber das Geld ist weg," I said softly, "but the money is gone." David understood the tone, if not the words. He saw Mr. Weber's face. He saw the horror in the other man's eyes. "Savannah, what did you tell him?" David screamed. "Speak English." I turned to David. I switched back to English. I wanted him to understand every detail of his ruin. "I told him you're broke, David." "I'm not broke," David yelled. "We have millions. The trust fund pays out on Friday. I have the transfer scheduled." "No," I said, "you don't." I reached into my purse. I pulled out a folded piece of paper. It was a bank statement. I unfolded it and held it up. "I moved the trust," I said. "Last week. I transferred the entire principal to a new account, an account solely in my name. An account you don't have access to, and the joint checking account, the one you use for your business expenses. I froze that this morning." David stared at the paper. He blinked rapidly. He shook his head. You can't do that. That's marital property." "It's inheritance," I corrected him. "It was never yours. I just let you play with it, but playtime is over." He pulled out his phone. His hands were shaking so badly he dropped it. He fumbled to pick it up. He tapped the screen frantically, trying to log into his banking app. I watched him. It was pathetic. "It's going to say access denied, David," I told him. He stared at the screen. His face turned gray. The blood drained from his lips. It's locked," he whispered. "Why is it locked?" "Because I reported suspicious activity," I said calmly. "I told the bank my husband was planning to embezzle funds to buy real estate for his mistress." Mr. Weber made a noise. He stepped away from David as if David had a contagious disease. He grabbed the contract from the counter and shoved it into his briefcase. "The deal is off," Mr. Weber said in heavily accented English. He looked at David with contempt. "Get out of my apartment." David looked up. Wait, it's a mistake. I can fix this. I have other assets." "You have nothing," I said. My voice rose just a little. "You have debt, David. You have credit card bills. You have a failing startup. You have a lease on a car you can't afford. The only asset you had was me, and you lost me." David looked at me. His eyes were wide, filled with a mixture of fear and hatred. "You bitch," he hissed. "You planned this, you set me up." "Yes," I said, "I did." "You can't leave me," he said. He tried to summon some of his old arrogance, but it was hollow. "We're married. You have to go through the courts. It will take years. I'll drag it out. I'll take half of everything." I reached into my purse again. I pulled out a thick envelope. "I already filed," I said. "My lawyer filed the petition 3 days ago, on the grounds of adultery and attempted fraud. We submitted the evidence, David, the emails, the text messages to Alina, the financial records where you tried to hide assets, the photos of you two in Miami." I tossed the envelope on the marble island. It landed with a heavy thud. "You've been served," I said. David looked at the envelope. He looked like he was going to vomit. Mr. Weber was watching us, fascinated and horrified. He clearly wanted us to leave, but he couldn't look away. "You have nothing," I repeated. "The house is in my name. The cars are in my name. The investments are in the trust. You are walking out of here with the suit on your back and a phone bill you can't pay." David slumped against the counter. His legs seemed to give out. He looked at the floor. The reality was crushing him. The confident man who walked in here 10 minutes ago was gone. He was replaced by a scared small boy. "Savannah," he whispered. "Please, let's talk about this. We can work this out. I'll end it with Alina. It was a mistake. It meant nothing. You know I love you." I looked at him. I felt nothing. No pity, no love, no anger. Just a vast, empty indifference. "Don't," I said. "Don't insult me. You don't love me. You called me boring. You said I was so boring it hurt. Remember?" He flinched. He knew I had read his emails. He knew there was no lie he could tell that would save him. "I learned German for you," I said quietly. "I tried to help you. I gave you everything, and you laughed at me in front of strangers." I turned to Mr. Weber. "Es tut mir leid für die Störung," I said politely. "I am sorry for the disturbance." Mr. Weber nodded slowly. He looked at me with a new expression, respect. "Jehan Sai," he said to David. "Go." I looked at my husband one last time. "It's over, David," I said. "Everything." The room felt smaller now, stripped of the illusion of grandeur. David stood by the kitchen island, gripping the edge of the marble as if it were a life raft. His knuckles were white. He looked at me, his eyes pleading. But it wasn't the look of a man fighting for love. It was the look of a parasite realizing its host had cut it off. "Savannah, you can't do this," he stammered. "Where am I going to go? I gave up my apartment when we got married. I don't have anywhere." "That sounds like a problem for Alina," I said. My voice was cool, detached. "She's the one you were planning a future with. Maybe she has a couch you can sleep on." Alina doesn't have money, David snapped, his desperation turning into anger. She lives with 3 roommates. She thinks I'm the one with the money. I almost laughed. It was so perfect. He had lied to everyone. He had lied to me about loving me, and he had lied to his mistress about his wealth. He was a fraud all the way down. Well, I said, I guess you have some bad news to break to her. I took my phone out of my purse. I placed it on the counter, screen up. Call her, I said. David stared at the phone. What? Call her, I repeated. Put it on speaker. Tell her the truth. Tell her the apartment is gone. Tell her the money is gone. Tell her you're homeless. I'm not doing that, David said, stepping back. If you don't, I said, I will call her myself. I have her number. I pulled it from your phone records. And if I call her, I'm going to send her the divorce filing that lists her as the correspondent. I'm going to sue her for alienation of affection. I will drag her name through the mud just as much as yours. David looked trapped. He looked at Mr. Weber, who was now leaning against the wall, arms crossed, watching the drama unfold with a grim satisfaction. Mr. Weber had no sympathy for a man who tried to use a fake fortune to waste his time. Do it, Mr. Weber said harshly. Make the call, I want to hear this. David's hand shook as he reached for his own phone. He dialed. He put it on speaker. The ringing sound echoed in the silent apartment. 1 ring, 2 rings. David, a woman's voice answered. It was Alina. She sounded excited. Did you get it? Are we celebrating tonight? David closed his eyes. He looked like he was in physical pain. Alina, he croaked. David, you sound weird. Is everything okay? Did you sign the papers? I stared at him. I didn't blink. I willed him to speak. No, David said. I didn't sign. What? Why not? Her voice sharpened instantly. David, you promised. I already told my landlord I was moving out. There's a problem with the money, David said. What problem? She demanded. You said the trust fund transfer was guaranteed. It's gone, David whispered. Savannah, she knows, she froze everything. The accounts are locked. I have nothing, Alina. I can't buy the apartment. I can't even pay for a hotel tonight. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. You're joking, Alina said. Her voice was cold now. Tell me you're joking. I'm not, David said. I'm sorry, I need. Can I come to your place? Just for a few days until I sort this out, Alina laughed. It was a cruel, harsh sound. Are you kidding me? I live in a shoebox, David. I was with you because you were going to change that. If you're broke, what use are you? I thought you loved me, David said, his voice breaking. I love the life you promised me, Alina said. Don't come here and don't call me again until you have money. Click, the line went dead. David stood there holding the phone. The silence that followed was heavy. He had lost everything in the span of 5 minutes. His wife, his mistress, his money, his pride. I felt a strange sense of lightness. The knot that had been in my stomach for months finally unraveled. There, I said. Now you're free, you don't have to lie anymore. David looked up at me. Tears were streaming down his face now. Savannah, please. Save your tears, I said. You're going to need them. I turned to Mr. Weber. I extended my hand. Auf Wiedersehen, Herr Weber, I said. Viel Glück beim Verkauf. Goodbye, Mr. Weber. Good luck with the sale. He shook my hand firmly. Sie sind eine starke Frau, he said. You are a strong woman. Ich lerne noch, I replied. I am still learning. I turned and walked toward the private elevator. I didn't look back at David. I could hear him sobbing behind me. It was a pathetic, broken sound. The elevator doors opened. I stepped inside. I pressed the button for the lobby. As the doors began to close, I saw David one last time. He was slumped on the floor, his head in his hands, surrounded by the luxury he would never have. The doors shut. The lock clicked. I descended. As the numbers on the elevator panel counted down, I felt my old life falling away. The actress was done. The victim was gone. I walked out of the building and onto the busy sidewalk. The air was cold and crisp. It smelled of exhaust and coffee and rain. It smelled like truth. I stood there for a moment, people rushing past me. No one knew what had just happened in that penthouse. No one knew that I had just dismantled my entire life. But I knew, and that was enough. I hailed a taxi. Where to? The driver asked. I thought about the big empty house in the suburbs. I didn't want to go there. That was David's stage. The St. Regis, I said. I had booked a suite for myself, just for me. I was going to order room service. I was going to take a long bath. And I was going to sleep in a bed that belonged only to me. As the taxi pulled away, I didn't look back at the tower. I looked forward. The next few weeks were a blur of activity, but it was a quiet, organized kind of chaos. I didn't see David again. I refused to meet him in person. My lawyer, Margaret, handled everything. She told me that David tried to fight at first. He tried to claim that I had stolen the money, but the paper trail was clear. The money was inheritance. It was never commingled, it was mine. Margaret told me he was living in a cheap motel near the airport. He had tried to get his old job back, but word had gotten around. Industries are small, people talk. The reputation of a man who tries to defraud his wife and fails is not a good one. I didn't care. I truly didn't. I blocked his number. I blocked his email. I deleted the photos from my phone. I sold the house in the suburbs. I couldn't live there anymore. It was too full of ghosts. It was too full of the lies I had told myself. I bought a smaller place, a loft in the city with big windows and brick walls. It was raw and honest. I filled it with my art. I filled it with books. I filled it with things that I liked, not things that would impress David's business partners. One afternoon, about 2 months after the confrontation, I met my brother James for coffee. We sat at a small table outside. The sun was shining. "You look different," James said. He was studying my face. "Different bad?" I asked. "No," he said. "Different good. You look solid. You used to look like you were fading away, Savannah, like you were transparent. Now you're all here," I smiled. "I feel all here." "Did you hear about him?" James asked tentatively. "No," I said. "And I don't want to," James nodded. "Good, that's the right answer." We drank our coffee. We talked about James's kids. We talked about a gallery opening I wanted to go to. We talked about the future. For the first time in years, the future didn't look scary. It didn't look like a tightrope I had to walk to keep someone else happy. It looked like a blank canvas. I realized that revenge isn't about hurting the other person. That's just a byproduct. Real revenge is about refusing to be the person they wanted you to be. David wanted a fool. He wanted a silent, submissive bank account. I became a warrior. I became a speaker of truths. I started taking German classes again. Real ones at the university. I wanted to master the language completely. I wanted to reclaim it. It wasn't just a tool for revenge anymore. It was a part of my heritage. It was a part of my mother. In class, we read stories about resilience. We read about history. I loved the precision of the language. I loved how you could build a sentence that stood like a fortress. One rainy Tuesday, I was walking home from class. I passed a restaurant where David and I used to go. I saw a couple in the window. The man was talking, gesturing, looking important. The woman was nodding, smiling, making herself small. I stopped and watched them for a second. I felt a pang of sadness. Not for me, but for her. I wanted to walk in there and tell her to wake up. I wanted to tell her to check his phone, to check the bank accounts, to learn a second language. But I knew she wouldn't listen. You can't save people who aren't ready to be saved. I wasn't ready until I saw the folder on the laptop. I wasn't ready until I heard the words in German. I walked away. I turned the corner onto my street. I saw my building. I saw the light on in my window. I had left it on a timer so I wouldn't come home to a dark house. I walked up the stairs. I unlocked the door. The apartment was quiet, but it wasn't a lonely silence. It was a peaceful silence. It was the silence of a space that is safe. I made myself a cup of tea. I sat by the window and looked out at the city lights. I thought about David one last time. I thought about how small he must feel now. I thought about how he had underestimated me. He thought I was weak because I was kind. He thought I was stupid because I was quiet. He forgot that silence isn't empty. Silence is full of answers. I took a sip of tea. It was warm and sweet. I was 30 years old. I was alone. I was divorced. And I had never been happier. I had my money, I had my dignity, and I had my voice. I spoke into the empty room just to hear the sound of it. "Ich bin frei," I whispered. "I am free." If someone has ever played you for a fool, remember this. Silence is strategy. Timing is power. Revenge doesn't need to be violent, just precise. Sometimes, the best thing you can do is let them think they are winning, right up until the moment they lose everything. Trust your gut, watch the signs. And never, ever let someone convince you that you are less than you are. Tell me your story in the comments. Have you ever had to reclaim your life from someone who underestimated you? Hit like and subscribe for more true stories where the underestimated rise, and the truth takes its final, perfect bow.